Good morning, everyone. Let's begin today's class. So this is lecture number 34. In the last class, we talked about folded cascode OTAs or folded cascode op-amps. We looked at both the differential version as well as the single-ended version. Now there is a couple of topics which I need to discuss here, which is basically the slew performance, and that I'll be doing an offline lecture. So I thought that I will club along with the discussion on how to design a folded cascode op-amp. Maybe I'll just provide a design example. So that will be an offline lecture which I will add. So today we will move to another type of OTA, which is a two-stage OTA, and we will also see some gain boosting techniques or regulated cascode OTAs. Okay. Now, so far we have talked about a normal 5-transistor OTA, both the differential version as well as the single-ended version. And then we said that normal 5-transistor OTA has fairly limited gain. Now, if you want to increase the gain, we need to go for what is called as a cascode, telescopic cascode OTA. And telescopic cascode OTA gave us very good gain. On the other hand, it had a limited input and output common mode range and limited output swing. So we went and if you take a telescopic cascode OTA and put it in unity gain feedback, the range of voltages in which the OTA works as an OTA, that is to say that all the transistors remain in saturation, is limited. And therefore, for applications where you need larger input common mode range, a larger range of voltages over which unity gain buffer or this op-amp in feedback can work, we wanted to go for a folded cascode OTA, which we discussed in last class. Now, folded cascode OTA gives us a very large input common mode range, and that was a big advantage. It also has good gain, but again the swing is fairly limited, because now in a folded cascode OTA you have 4 transistors stacked between VDD and ground, and now all 4 of them have to be in saturation, which means it is VDD minus 4 VDS sats which need to be removed from the available voltage swing. Right? Now, in order to satisfy the demands of application where the OTA needs to have a high gain as well as high swing, okay, we introduce this type of OTA, which is called as a two-stage OTA. Now, what we will see is that for each of these different types of op-amps, there are certain advantages and certain disadvantages. Okay, so depending on what your exact requirement is, you need to pick a suitable topology. Now, a two-stage OTA is like this. You have differential inputs. Of course, you have both the differential and common mode versions. We will see both of them. Now, you have 2 stages, stage 1 and stage 2. Okay, this you would say is pretty obvious. Now, the way in which this is designed is that, let's say this is the input and this is the output. The first stage is designed such that you have high gain, and the second stage is designed such that you have high swing. Okay. Basically, this topology can provide you with high gain and high swing. Okay. Now, you might ask me, what is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that it will have lower bandwidth. Now, the discussion on bandwidth and why it becomes lower, we will kind of reserve that discussion for maybe a few classes later, where we'll be talking about stability and compensation and things like that. So just take it from me now that a two-stage OTA has a very low bandwidth. Okay. Now, of course, the other thing is the moment you put more number of branches from the VDD to ground, you have more power consumption. And the way in which this two-stage OTA is designed, as I mentioned, is the first stage is designed such that it provides you a very high gain, and the second stage is designed such that it has very kind of a mediocre type gain, and then its main job is to provide good amount of swing. Now this, what are the different things that you can put in the high gain stage? It can be a normal 5 transistor OTA. It can also be a telescopic cascode, okay, or you can put any folded cascode. Okay, any of these things can become a stage 1, and stage 2 is typically a common source amplifier. Okay, because a common source amplifier with a current source load is one which gives you the highest amount of swing available among all the other topologies. And so, and the gain, you get kind of a mediocre amount of gain, but that is okay. But you compensate for the gain in stage 1. For example, let me just take an example. I need a gain of, let's say, 60 dB. Okay, just taking a simple example. What is 60 dB gain? It's basically a gain of 1000 volt per volt. Okay. Now, the way you have to design a two-stage OTA is to partition, first of all, partition your gain between the two stages. So, a gain of, let's say, 1000 can be, of course, partitioned in so many different ways. But you can kind of do something like, a common source can give you a gain of 10 volt per volt, and you put 100, a gain of 100 for your stage 1. Now this partitioning can go either way. That's still okay. But for a given technology, you kind of know, okay, how much gain you can kind of squeeze out of the transistors that are available to you, and so you kind of make a partitioning which looks something similar to this. You can make this 70 and then compensate for it in the second stage. That's all okay. But something like this is what typically is done. Okay. Now let me give you a simple two-stage OTA. So let's say we start with a a 5-transistor OTA. First, let me draw the differential version. Okay. And so this is our very standard 5-transistor OTA. This is our V in P, V in M, and we have our current source. Okay, let's call this M1, M2, M3, and M4. Okay, this needs to be biased somehow, which obviously we know how to do, right? And then now this is your first stage. Now for the second stage, what you do, so this is given to another common source amplifier. Now if you look at the typical voltage at this particular node, right, this output common mode DC point, let me just call it as Vout2 and Vout1 and Vout2. Now the DC common mode voltage of Vout1, 2 will be kind of slightly in the range which is above VDD by 2, because you kind of have 3 transistors now stacked between VDD and ground, right? And you need both, let's call this as M5, and basically you need M5 and M2, M1, M2 to be in saturation. So obviously Vout will be slightly greater than or a little greater than VDD by 2. So that bias voltage, it's more convenient to give to a common source amplifier where the input transistor is a PMOS. Okay. So for example, if your VDD is, let's say, 1.2 volt, okay, maybe your Vout1, Vout2, let's say, for example, let me just say, for example, is around 800 millivolt. Okay. Now basically 800 millivolt of gate voltage is better suited to be given to a PMOS transistor rather than an NMOS transistor, because if you give this to an NMOS transistor, you need at least the VDS of what, which is, hand calculation wise, it is what, 800 minus the threshold voltage, which is, if you take the threshold voltage to be around 350 millivolt or something like that, you need 450 millivolt of VDS. Okay, of course, the value when you actually simulate will be lower, but let's say with all the margins and so on, you want something like 450 millivolt across your transistor. It is not a good thing. It limits your swing. Okay. Whereas if you have this here, the VSG is what? Around 400 millivolt. Okay, and so usually the second stage, if you have an NMOS input pair for your first stage, the second stage input transistor will be a PMOS. Okay. And of course, you need a current source load. Now, the current source load is basically a NMOS transistor, right? Now, all these three transistors basically are NMOS current sources. So how do you bias them? You basically have some reference current. You put it, let's say, through a current mirror. Okay. Let's give some numbers. Let's say this is M6, M7, this is M8, M9, and M10. Okay. So the way in which typically the design is done is you have a reference current coming in, and through this you basically generate your biases for the NMOS. Okay. You might say, how do you generate VB? Of course, the simple, straightforward way is to put another current mirror and generate. But probably in next class, that is tomorrow's class, we will see that that is not a good thing to do. We will talk about common mode feedback, and that is basically, that can probably, help you, give you the bias for these PMOS transistors, which is VB. Okay. But otherwise, this I reference is used to generate a gate voltage, which is given to all the three current sources that are there. Of course, the widths will be different. M7 and M9 will be the same because you want it to be symmetric. Of course, M5, the current width will be different based on what is the tail current source that you are deciding. Okay. Now, how can we write the gain equation? So, gain equation can be written as what? The product of the two gains. Right? So, what is the gain of the first stage? Gain of the first stage can be written as GM1, 2. Let's say R02 parallel to R04, because you can, it's 1, 2 or 4, 3, whatever it is. Okay. This multiplied by the gain of the second stage. The gain, what is the gain of the second stage? It is GM6 into R06 parallel to R07. Okay. So this becomes your gain expression. Basically, it is the product of the two gains. Okay. Now the first stage can be telescopic, it can be folded cascode, you can do all those things. That's all perfectly fine. Okay. Now what about the before we look at the noise, this is the fully differential version. Now, okay, let me just pause here before going into even the single-ended OTA. Let me just have a small digression here. Now, we have been talking about, how this OTAs, especially the fully differential ones or even the single-ended ones, need to be symmetric. Okay, the whole premise is that things are symmetric, and if they are symmetric, you get very good common mode rejection, and what you want happens, right? And before we started the discussion on all these things, we also saw how, mismatches, okay, if the assumption of symmetricity is lost, if transistors, let's say M1 and M2 are mismatched, or M3 and M4 are mismatched, you end up with, a common mode to differential mode conversion, which impacts your CMRR, right? So mismatch of any sort is going to impact your CMRR, and your common mode performance is kind of going to degrade because of that, right? Now, how do we make sure, or how do we improve the symmetricity? Okay. So in many of the differential amplifier layout, okay, so this kind of comes down to layout. So the layout is done in, again, the common centroid way. So let's just talk a little bit about layout. Okay. First of all, the layout has to be fully symmetric. Okay. When I say symmetric, it is not only that, these transistor width and length are the same, or for that matter, the number of fingers, the width per finger, everything is the same. Okay. That is, of course, the first level at the schematic level. Now, even the layout has to be extremely symmetric. And therefore, what people do in order to do a very symmetric layout is basically create half cells. Now, what is a half cell? So basically, I just take, let's say, one half of this differential amplifier. Let's say I'm just taking this is M3 and M1, right? One side. So I will basically do the layout. So let me just draw the layout, a very rough sketch of the layout. Okay. Let me say I'm now putting only one finger. Of course, you can extend it to whatever it is, right? So now here, what is happening? So let's say this is source, this is source, this is drain. Okay, let me just draw it a little smaller. Okay. Okay. Let's say this is M3, this is M1. Now let's say this is the source, this is the drain. Of course, this is the gate, right? Now, how do I connect these things? The source of M3 is given to VDD. So you basically have a VDD line, and the source is connected there. Of course, you will have contacts here, which is usually given when you instantiate it. And this source is connected to the ground line, right? This is ground, right? Now, these two drains have to be shorted together, right? And this becomes one side. And also what happens, this gate is given to, you put a, let's say, a contact, right? And let's say this is your V in P, right? Now here again you need some kind of bias. Let's say here again you put a contact, and this is connected to VB. Okay. Now what I will do is, this is my half cell. Okay. Now how do I make a highly symmetric layout? I just make a half cell and then copy it, flip it around, and then attach it the other side. Okay. So this is copy, pasted, and flipped. Okay. So that you have exact symmetry. Okay. Because no matter how careful you are, if you try to make things symmetric, you can still have, maybe let's say the width of this line becomes little wider. Maybe the distance between these two transistors can be slightly more, slightly less. Okay, all those human errors can happen. Okay, so which is why the best way to do differential amplifiers layout is to create a half cell, and then sorry, actually this is not ground. This is basically going to the current source. Okay, all right, the tail current source. Now you just create it, copy, paste it, flip it around, then attach it, and you get a perfectly symmetric layout. Another technique which is used is something we have already seen. You use common centroid layout. Now I just used a single transistor here, right, where let's say this M1 is given by, let's say the width of the finger is equal to, let's say 500 nanometer. Number of fingers, earlier I used one. Let's say I'm giving a different thing. Okay, number of fingers is, let's say 4, and multipliers is 2. Of course, channel length is, let's say 16 nanometer. Now how will this transistor look like? Basically this transistor will look like something like this. You have the width per finger being 500 nanometer, right? And I'm going to have 4 fingers, right? Which means I have 4 gates, right? And I have a multiplier of 2, which means this transistor's layout basically looks like this. Okay. 2 units of, finger width 500 and number of fingers 4. So let's say this will be S, D, S, D, S. This will all be S, D, S, D, S. Okay. So all the sources need to be connected to, let's say if this is the NMOS, it gets connected to the tail current source. So all of them will get connected to this bottom kind of a rail. Of course, the drains will now have to get connected to a top kind of thing, to which the PMOS transistors, which will have a similar kind of thing, will be connected. Now, when you say common centroid, when I did only this, there is absolutely no problem, right? Because of course you put the negative side thing here, and then you're done, right? But whereas when you have something like this, again, what you do, you remember that you have the ABBA rule, right? Or if you have a two-dimensional gradient cancellation, you kind of do like that. So what you do is basically, let's say you have the differential pair, let's call this transistor A and transistor B, and each of them have multiple units. The way you will design it is something like this. You put transistor A, transistor B, BA, and A, B, AAB, so that gradients in both X and Y axis are getting cancelled out. So here again, symmetricity is very important. But when you do a common centroid layout, of course, the concept of half cell really doesn't work out so easily. And you kind of take a lot of pains to make sure that this is extremely symmetric. Or you create a unit cell and then just copy paste that, n number of times. And of course, it need not be just 2 cross 4, it can be 4 cross 4 or any other, aspect ratio. Okay. Now, again, when it comes to the current mirrors, or let's say the current sources, okay, if you look at this op amp, M10 is providing the bias, and you have M5, M9, and M7. So usually in the industry, the way in which layout is done is all these 4 transistors, that is M10, M9, M5, and M7, all of them will be laid out together. Okay, so maybe I'll just put some annotation here. So this whole thing will be layout together, okay, and this will have a common centroid layout, right? M10 will be in the center, and all of them will be around it to make sure that the mismatches are minimum as possible. And then of course these 2 transistors will be laid out together, right, with common centroid. Okay, and then you will have M8 and M6 being laid out together, and of course M3 and M4 together. Okay. So analog layout is not very simple or straightforward. You do take a lot of pains to make sure there is symmetricity, and common centroid techniques are followed to make sure that things are extremely symmetric. Okay. Because any kind of mismatch is basically going to come and affect you. Okay. So this is the way things are done together. All right. So let me say current sources also common centroid, M10, M9, M5, M7, right, all laid out together. Okay, all right. Now let us also look at the single-ended version of the transistor. Okay, the 2 single-ended version of OTA, right? So how do you do that? Basically, the first stage itself converts the differential signal to single-ended. So how do you do that? Basically, you put a current mirror load, right? So let's say this is M1, M2, this is V in plus, this is V in minus. Let's say this is M3, M4, okay, this is M5. Now this output is taken, so you have a single-ended out. You just take this, again put it through a, let's say M6 PMOS transistor, and then you have M7. Okay, so these, of course, 2 transistors are biased together. All right, and this becomes your V out. Okay. Of course, the gain equations remain the same. And only thing is of course, this first stage can be replaced with, let's say, a telescopic cascode or a folded cascode or a regular cascode, which we'll see next after this. So any of those topologies can be used. And this is the way that you basically have your two-stage OTA. Now let us look at the noise performance. Now, just looking at the op-amp, okay, what can we guess about the noise performance? First of all, which noise of, let's say this is first stage and this is second stage. Which of the noise contributions will have lower which of the stages will have a low contribution to the input referred noise? Or will they have equal contribution?
Stage 1 will have more contribution.
Stage 1 will have more contribution. Why? Because the noise of stage 2, right? In this case, let me just write the noise of M6 and M7. Of course, you have the noise current sources across both the transistors, basically all the transistors. Now, what we can say is the noise of, let's say, 4kT gamma GM6 plus GM7, okay, will be divided by the overall gain. What is the overall gain? GM1 squared into R01 parallel to R03, the whole squared into GM5, not 5, what is this? 6, right? GM6 squared into R06 parallel to R07, the whole squared. Of course, this is the noise current multiplied by the expression, which is R06 to R07, into the output impedance expression, which is R06 parallel to R07, the whole square. This is the noise due to the second stage, right? And what about the noise due to the first stage? The first stage noise is 4kT gamma. So this is for the single-ended version I'm writing. For the fully differential version, of course, you'll have 2 times the first term, right? So this becomes 2 times 4kT gamma GM1 plus GM3 into the output impedance is, of course, you basically multiply by the second stage gain, right? I mean, this into the R01 squared into the GM6 squared R02 squared, and then divide by the overall gain, which is GM1 squared R01 squared into GM6 squared R02 squared. Now all these terms will basically cancel out and you end up with this, right? And therefore the contribution of the first stage is more than the contribution of the second stage. Similarly, you can write for flicker noise as well. All right. Of course, when you write for the fully differential case, as I mentioned, there will be a factor of 2 here for fully differential OTA. Okay. Okay. So, of course, output swing, input common mode range, and other things we have already looked at for these simple stages. The same things will apply. Okay. Now, let us move to another technique which is basically called as gain boosting. Okay. So, many times what happens is sometimes you need a large amount of gain and you are ready to sacrifice a lot of other things like, let's say, bandwidth and so on, but you just basically want a very high open loop gain. For example, if you need, let's say, a very precise negative feedback amplifier, if you recall our first module, or rather module 0, where we said the accuracy of the gain is dependent on the gain of the op-amp, right? So in order for your gain of the op-amp to be pretty high, you need sometimes you need a very high gain op-amp where you are ready to sacrifice, let's say, power and bandwidth and so on. Okay. So in that case, we use what is called as some gain boosting technique. So let us just develop that technique. Now suppose you have a transistor, right? And you give an input and you look at the short circuit output current, the transconductance is basically equal to G. This we all know. Now suppose instead of directly giving it to this transistor, suppose I put an amplifier. Okay. Let's say I'm putting a small op amp. This has a gain of A. Now, if you calculate the short circuit output current and compute the effective transconductance capital GM, what will be the transconductance of this particular circuit?
AGM.
It will be
A into GM.
A times GM,
GM.
because you will have a voltage of A times V in here, and this transistor has a transconductance of GM, right? So you basically have a overall transconductance of A times GM. Okay. Now you can basically say that I can, instead of grounding the negative terminal of this op amp, okay, I'm just going to connect it to the source. So basically my op amp is going to be like this. So I mean, this again is basically A times GM if you ground it. Now suppose you put, so this is what is called as gain boosting. You put an amplifier in front of your input state, and then you connect the negative terminal to the source of the MOSFET, so that the VGS is basically what, here in this case, you're referring with the source terminal. Now suppose you have something else below this transistor, okay? And if we use this same technique, because that is what happens, right? Let's say there is some source resistance here, right? And you are going to put a amplifier of gain A, right? And you are going to give this feedback. Now what will be the effective gain here? So we can basically write expressions. We are interested in finding out the short circuit output current for this transistor, right? Now how can we write this? What is the voltage at this point? Let's call it X. The node voltage at X is nothing but V in minus I out times Rs multiplied by gain A, right? Now what is the gate to source voltage? The gate to source voltage basically is, or rather the input voltage which is coming to this is nothing but Vx times Vx minus I out Rs is your gate to source voltage. Okay, let me just use small VGS, because now we are basically talking about the small signal stuff here, right? Now what is I out? I out can be written as GM times VGS, which is nothing but V in minus I out Rs times A minus I out times Rs. Now what you can do is basically collect all the I out terms here. This is basically 1 plus A times Rs times GM, right, plus Rs times GM, right? And this is equal to GM times Vn. Okay. Now what is I out by Vin? I out by Vin is nothing but GM divided by, okay, so there is A here, A times GM divided by 1 plus A plus 1 times GM Rs. Okay. Now if you didn't have this extra amplifier, right, without the amplifier, if you do the same thing, basically from our discussion of common source to source degeneration, we know that the effective GM would have been GM divided by 1 plus GM Rs, right? Now what has happened? The numerator and denominator are kind of scaled by, I mean, the GM is basically scaled by a factor of A. Of course, A will be typically much greater than 1, so you can kind of say that it is much higher. Okay. So basically you have an improvement, slight improvement in the overall GM that you get, right? But on the other hand, okay, what about the output impedance? Because source degeneration will always reduce your transconductance. Now because of the factor of A, this GM will be, the GM with the regulated cascode will be better than the GM without the amplifier. Okay. Now what happens to the output impedance? You can similarly find it out I'll not redo the analysis. Basically, all you need to do is take the same circuit. This is V in, RS. Of course, you have R naught. You give a test voltage source, VT, measure IT, right? And basically, you write the expression. So basically, R out becomes something like this. Becomes R naught plus RS plus A plus 1 times GM R naught into RS. Okay. Now, what happens? What has happened here to the R out? R out has increased by a factor of approximately, right? Because A plus 1, right? Of course, R naught RS is still there, but then you can see that the majority of the large value will basically come from the third term, right? Compared to the third term, the first two terms will be fairly low. So this type of an architecture or this type of a design is what is called as a regulated cascode. Okay. This is called as a regulated cascode, and in fact, instead of this RS, you can also have a transistor. Okay. So for example, if you have a current source at the bottom, this can be done. For example, you can also use this in contexts where, let's say, the input also need not be given to the amplifier. Instead of that, you can have some kind of a bias value which is used. Okay. So for example, if you have a cascode amplifier, okay, a single-ended structure. Let's just look at a single-ended structure first, and then we'll look at the other OTAs. Right? V in and VB. This was our cascode amplifier. Right? Now, what are we doing? Basically, we want to improve the output impedance of this cascode, and therefore, what we can do is basically to put a amplifier here. Now, here what happens is you give let's say another VB dash, right? And the input is not given here, right? But basically, what this does is this op amp, let's say this is M1, this is M2, right? This gain boosting technique. So what is basically it is doing is it is improving your output impedance. An intuitive way of understanding is like this. Okay, what is output impedance? That is, if you, let's say, stick some kind of a test voltage source, or in other words, if you give some disturbance here, some delta V disturbance at the output, you want to know how much current delta I it is going to take, right? This VT by IT is your output impedance. In other words, if you kind of take the output node and wiggle it around, okay, how much of that wiggling current is going to be produced tells you how much of output impedance is there, the ratio basically, right? Now, in this particular case, what is setting your current? M1 is setting your current. So this is basically an intuitive understanding of the circuit. Okay, M1 sets the current. Now, because of the M1 sets the current, and the input voltage has, that is basically going to, fix the current. But because of the drain to source VDS changes, okay, ID1 changes. ID1 is basically equal to IOUT, right? Because of the channel length modulation effect. And we know that by putting a cascode, we are kind of fixing the voltage at this, let's call this node as P. The node voltage at P is getting fixed by putting a cascoding transistor, because that is approximately equal to the VB minus the VGS of this cascoding transistor. Okay. So if you produce a certain amount of disturbance at the output, the amount of disturbance that actually appears at this node P is lesser because of the cascode transistor. Now, on top of that, what have you done? You have put an op amp. Now, what is this op amp going to do? this op amp is in negative feedback, and the job of this op amp is basically to make sure that this node P is at the same voltage as VB, right? This both the potentials will be the same. Okay, so accordingly, it is going to change the gate bias of M2, making sure that the node P is as fixed as possible to VB. So what is going to happen? Because of A, this is amplifier A, VP is more rigid. Let me just call it as rigid. Okay, it doesn't easily change because of the changes at the output node. Okay, which basically means that IOUT is more rigid or fixed, let's say. Okay, which basically means what? Output impedance is very high. Alright, you are not allowing the drain to source voltage of M1 to change by putting this regulated cascode, and by doing so, you are making sure that the one of the effects is basically that the output impedance is extremely high. Okay, by how much it is high, we have already seen in the previous slide. Okay, it is multiplied by the amount of gain. So the higher the gain, we know that the error voltage between the plus and minus terminals of this op amp is going to be very low, right? Which basically means that the node P is going to be more fixed or more rigid, which basically means that IOUT variations are extremely low. Okay, which obviously means that output impedance is very high. That is exactly what we are seeing in this equation. Higher the gain, the higher the output impedance. All right. This is an intuitive way of understanding what exactly is happening. Now let us try to use this in develop this op amp, right? So let's say we have this transistor, right? Now how do you design this transistor A? Sorry, op amp A, right? Let's say this is V in. We can use a simple common source amplifier to provide the gain. Right? Now this transistor, let's call it M3, and current source, let's say I3, right? Let's say this is M1, M2. This particular thing is nothing but your gain block A. Alright. Now there is one small problem here, because we are using an NMOS transistor as our gain state, right? The M3 is an NMOS transistor, so it needs what? At least a VGS here. VGS, for example, in a 1.2 volt supply should be at least around 0.3, 0.35, around 0.4, something like that. But what is the voltage typically around here? This is basically VDS, which just needs to be a little greater than VDS SAT. Okay, so which basically means the amount of voltage available for M3, right? VGS of M3 limits what? The output swing, right? Because now you need to, this was the original condition, but now you have to make sure that it is greater than VGS3. Okay, this is the old condition. With A, you need this to be greater than VGS3, which basically means that your output swing now gets limited. All right. So this is not a very good way to implement it. So what can we say? Let's say we have another way to implement. Then you might say, let's just go for a PMOS transistor, right? Now what happens when you go for a PMOS transistor? Let's say you put a PMOS transistor as the input, and you have a current source. Now this is connected here. Let's say this is M1, M2. Let me call this same thing as I3, M3. Now if you put a PMOS transistor, right? Of course, the gate to source voltage is very large, right? And now this gate to source voltage, because it is it is large, but then what happens is M3 can easily enter into the triode region, okay? Because you need a larger voltage for this VB that needs to be supplied to M2. This has to be large enough to support what? This VGS2. Let me just use another color to illustrate the point. Now this VGS has to be, VB has to be what? VGS2 plus the VDS sat of 1, right? Or a VDS which is greater than this VDS sat of 1, right? So this voltage has to be fairly high, okay? And this node voltage is low. So what happens is this M3 can move to triode region. If you use an NMOS, the output swing is limited because VG, the M3 has to be on. Now if you use a PMOS, the voltage at the output is high and the voltage at the input is low, right? And therefore it can, M3 can go into triode region. If it goes into triode region, your amplifier gain also drops. So a good way to do it is basically to say, okay, let's use the best of both worlds, which is basically to use a folded cascode. Now what is folded cascode? Of course, this is the single-ended version that we are talking about, right? You give the input to a PMOS transistor, right? And what do? You take this drain and connect it to the source of a NMOS cascode, right? And take this voltage and give it here. Okay. Now, of course, to bias this whole thing, you need a current source here. So let's say this is I1, this is I3, I2, okay, M1, M2, let's say this is M3 and M4. Now again, this has to be given some bias voltage, which we can generate it somehow. We know how to generate it. Okay. So basically, you use a folded cascode amplifier. So where M3 here has got enough amount of VGS and M4 here has got sufficiently high VDS. So both M3 and M4 are happily in saturation. They are not limiting anything. And a folded cascade amplifier is used as the feedback amplifier. Okay. All right. So this whole thing is called as a gain boosted op amp, or it is also called as a regulated cascode amplifier. Now we will not go into very detailed analysis here, just enough for us to understand that this whole arrangement is going to give us a very high output impedance, and we have seen the approximate expression for the output impedance, right? And then because your output impedance is very high, right? So which basically is R01 plus R02 plus A plus 1 times GM2 R02 R01, right? Now what is 3 dB bandwidth? 1 by 2 pi R out CL, right? Now this R out is very high, and therefore this 3 dB bandwidth is also going to be very low. Okay, so if you were to do a simple comparison of the normal cascode and the regulated cascode, right? Let's say this is log of omega. This is V out by V in, right? Magnitude of it. Now you can basically say that if your normal cascode was something like this, okay, your regulated cascode will basically be something like this. Okay. Let's say this is called as your normal cascode amplifier, and this other one is basically your regulated cascode, okay, where the gain is basically given by A times GM1 R01 GM2 R02 approximately. Here of course you have GM1 R01 R02 GM2, right? So your gain, low frequency gain has improved, but your bandwidth has correspondingly come down. This is basically 1 divided by A GM1 GM2 R01 R02. This is an approximate expression, of course, and whereas into CL, This is basically GM1, GM2, R01, R02, CL. Okay. And this is how your regulated cascode basically looks like. And because you have put another output pole here, extra stage. Now basically this node voltage will also have some parasitic capacitance, right? And you basically have two paths, and therefore you'll have one more pole as well. Okay. The textbook has gone through the full derivation, which of course we'll not do today. And you'll know that there is another pole. Okay. Now, in conclusion, you can use this for differential amplifiers also, right? So, for example, if you are using it in a differential amplifier, basically you can, let's say you take a telescopic cascode, you can make it a regulated telescopic cascode by, let's say this is one thing. I'm just drawing a telescopic cascode OTA, right? And well, you don't connect these two together. This is your, let's say, V in M. This is your V in P, right? Now, what you can do is, in order to provide the to make this cascode as a regulated cascode, now because it's a differential signal, you can always take a differential amplifier here, right? And you can take this and give it as your output. Okay. Say this is plus minus. This is amplifier A1. Same way, what you can do is you can tap the two things and give it as an op amp, either directly, or you can also take it as differential outputs and give it. Let's say this is A2. Now this whole thing becomes what? It becomes a regulated telescopic cascode OTA. Okay. So these are some gain boosting techniques. Same way you can do it for your folded cascode and so on. By putting this amplifier and biasing up your cascode, you are increasing the output impedance and increasing the gain of this OTA. Of course, it has its own penalties, as we saw. Okay. So with this, we'll conclude today's class, and I'll try to record and post a lecture with the continuation of folded cascode, and maybe I'll just take up one op amp design, maybe a folded cascode design, or maybe a transistor OTA design, and so that it will be useful for you to do your projects also, and you'll really understand the concepts. Okay. So I did notice that many had not watched the recorded lecture that I had put up. Please do watch it. Don't reserve the whole thing for the last minute, because too much of new concepts and information will be too much for you at the last moment. Okay. All right. Okay. Any doubts or any questions? Okay. So we'll conclude today's class. As I mentioned, next week, Monday and Tuesday, we'll have our midterm review for your project. So I want to see at least some partial results, some designs being done, and kind of I want to see some midway point where you have progressed in your design. Okay. Okay. So thanks everyone, and have a nice day.